Karakoram Himalaya glaciers store vast water towers feeding the Indus and other rivers. These glaciers are retreating rapidly due to climate change and deforestation, threatening water supply, hydropowers, agriculture, and increasing glacial lake outburst floods. Black carbon from regional pollution worsen melting by darkening snow and ice. Studies noted that glacier melt and change precipitation will alter water availability, with major implications for 1 billion people in South Asia. In Gilgit-Baltistan and beyond, glacier melt buffers flow in dry seasons, but accelerated retreat and monsoon shift threaten these buffers. Many glacial lakes have formed. Their outbursts pose acute hazards to downstream communities and infrastructure. According to research, hundreds of lakes in Hindu Kush Himalaya region is classified as potentially dangerous lakes. Expert reviews emphasize that unmitigated glacier retreat will intensify water stress, floods, and ecosystem loss. Despite these clear risks, Pakistan currently lacks a comprehensive glacier adaptation plan to address the impact of black carbon and climate-induced glacier retreats. Existing climate policies and disaster management frameworks do not yet integrate targeted measures for glacier protection, black carbon emission reduction, or adaptive water resource management at the basin level. The only viable reason is proactive adaptation, enhancing monitoring, risk management, and resilience across sectors. To address these challenges and identify key adaptation measures, we invited you for today's session. The objectives of this consultation is to facilitate a dialogue among the stakeholders on glacier retreat, glove risk, water security, and black carbon impacts in Gilgit-Baltistan, to bring together government agencies, research institutions, NGOs, and development partners to share experiences and ongoing initiatives related to glacier monitoring and climate adaptation, to discuss and highlight feasible technical, nature-based, institutional, and early warning measures for glacier risk management, gather stakeholder inputs to outline key priorities, actions, and coordination mechanism for developing the glacier adaptation plan. Before we process, I would like to briefly share a few housekeeping rules for online speakers. Kindly keep your microphones muted while not speaking. For online participants, please use the chat or Q&A box for your questions. I request our speakers to keep their points to their allocated time to ensure a smooth flow of discussion. Time for each speaker is 5 minutes. Please note that this session is being recorded for documentation purposes and it's live stream. Before we proceed, I would like to introduce my speakers for today's consultation. We have been joined by Mr. Zakir Hussain, Director, GBDMA. He will be joining us online. Mr. Khadim Hussain, Director, Environmental Protection Agency, Gilgit-Baltistan. He will also be joining us online. Mr. Sabiuddin, FISPO Cryosphere Expert, NDMA. He will be joining us online. Ms. Kuratulain Ahmed, Head of Water Resources and Glaciology Section from Global Climate Change Impact Study Center. Ms. Aisha Khan, Executive Director, Civil Society Coalition for Climate Change. Mr. Sher Mohammed, Remote Sensing Specialist from ICIMOT, Nepal. Mr. Mohammad Fawad Hayat, Senior Director, Recharge Pakistan, WWF. Mr. Dev Foguzza, Glaciologist, EVK to Senal, Italy. Mr. Ijaz Karim, Head of Emergency Management at Khan Agency for Habitat. Mr. Arif Hussain, Technical Representative, Regional Manager, North, EVK to CNR. Mr. Talha Bhatti, Research Officer, Climate Change Institute of Regional Studies. Mr. Sajad Ali, Deputy Director for Climate Change Adaptation, Pakistan Red Crescent Society, PRCS. Mr. Fahim Ahmed, Technical Specialist, UNDP. We are also honored that Dr. Musaddiq Malik, Federal Minister of Ministry of Climate Change and Environmental Coordination, he will be joining us shortly as a chief guest for today's consultation. To formally begin this session, I would like to invite Ms. Zainab Naeem. She is leading Ecological Sustainability and Circular Economy Unit at Sustainable Development Policy Institute for a technical presentation on the status of glaciers and why adaptation is needed. Ms. Zainab Naeem, floor is yours.
Thank you so much. So basically, I'm just going to be highlighting some of the statistics and why adaptation is needed. But I think more than myself, we have experts who have actually worked there. So do correct me if I'm wrong in context of any data, anything, because we are here to listen you, and we are just setting the scene or tone of the session on, why this is needed. Next kijega, please. मुझे स्लाइडर दे दें अगर है. So, as we all are witnessing extreme climatic events, and specifically after 2022, the glacier retreat has been exacerbated in Pakistan. Before that, there were studies by ICIMOD and other organizations in context of that the HKH region, Hindu Kush, Karakoram, Himalaya region glaciers were surging. But after that, I think there has been no surge. Rather, the melt is exacerbating. Average glacier mass, since these are some reported research evidences that suggest that between 2006 till 15, there has been a decline in the average glacier mass, and the permafrost changes estimated 3.6 to 5.2 million kilometers square underlain by permafrost. And then 27 to 29% of global permafrost area in high mountain regions, especially because this is the third pole, the freshwater resource for South Asia, and any changes in the third pole will indicate how temperature patterns are going to be determined in the region. And decreasing permafrost thickness, loss of ground ice. One of the latest reports by Reuters, if I don't know how many have you gone through it, they recently reported that in Skardu they have this ice hockey championship. So if that rink is established naturally on the ice hockey, this time the ice was simply not there. I mean, even if it was there, they were not able to play it because it was the layer was so thin. And then they had to move towards the northern sides to play the game. And even there, the mass was not thick enough. It was very dangerous, but they still were able to play the game. So this is how it is getting impacted, and the evidence is recently reported. This graph indicates how since 1980 the temperature is being shifted, and how the cryosphere overall dynamics are shifting. The mass balance of the ice is getting shifted. Now, climate change trends, temperature and precipitation. HKH warming, 0.2 degrees Celsius, decrease in last 50 years, greater at higher altitudes. Peak summer and winter temperatures are rising faster. Interestingly, till 2022, as I mentioned, there was not much increase in temperature reported along the glacier side. Even we were having good mass of ice along the glaciers. But post 2022, I've read somewhere, but it was in a news report. I'm not able to quote the exact source, that the glacier retreat has been exacerbated by 15 to 20%. Now, let's see. I'm still waiting for the scientists to explain if this is the case. But even if a general observation you make it, you will see how GLOF events are getting reported almost every year. I hope you remember the Hussaini Bridge incidents in 2022, and then Shispa, and then very recently, now even during this Western disturbance spell in the Kagan Valley and in the northern areas, more, permafrost layer is being observed as part of the debris that is happening when there's rainfall. Even last year in 2025, in different areas of Gilgit Baltistan, the debris flow did not indicate snow only. It had a lot of mud to it as well. This happens when there are moraine glaciers, when there is not thick layer of ice along the glaciers, and then the soil loses its grip and it comes down as part of the debris. So this has been reported as well. Future projections: snow cover glaciers and permafrost are projected to continue to decline. This has been reported in the IPCC AR6 report. And for 2081 to 2100, likely by 10 to 40%. Now, these are some of the trends that you usually read in the IPCC reports. Projected glacier mass reductions between 2015 to 2100 are likely to be 22 to 44% for RCP 2.6 and 37 to 57% for RCP 8.5. I will not get into technical details. These are some of the projections that are made by scientists in the AR reports, and you see the trends, how through different modeling assessments these trends are made and why these are projected. So for a layman purpose, this is the projection for how glaciers are going to be receding at a very rapid pace. And then if you compare it, a decade or two, previously, low elevation snow depth will likely decrease by 10 to 40%. ये प्रिडिक्ट किया गया था 2005 के बाद, लेकिन ये 2005 के बाद फिर भी इतना पेसअप नहीं हुआ जितना 2022 के बाद ये पेसअप हो गया. Black carbon and glaciers, this is one of the most less addressed phenomena of black carbon. Black carbon, it resembles soot, but it is a short-lived super pollutant. How it is released, especially when biomass is burned, uh, in the northern areas, people do not have access to clean cooking tools, and they have to burn the biomass. लकड़ियां ज्यादातर जलाई जाती है, और जब ज्यादा लकड़ी जलाई जाती है जो कि जल्दी आग पकड़ती है, so what happens is it releases black carbon. That is short-lived super pollutant. Why? Because it is dispersed in the atmosphere for some time, then it settles on the glaciers. The white color of the glaciers, it reflects light, and it does not absorb sunlight directly. But when these black particles settle on the glacier, the albedo is affected and it absorbs more solar radiation, which exacerbates the glacier melt. So it's not just the global climate change, it is also the local challenges, because of some misplanning and misgovernance and no access to these clean cooking tools, that they are receding. Now, black carbon sources in South Asia, urban vehicles, not in the northern areas, but overall because of the tourism, the vehicle diesel exhaust is creating this black carbon. Then brick kiln, which are releasing this. Overall, South Asia, this is one of the major sources of black carbon, and the black carbon does not only remain in that particular area; it tends to travel because of the atmospheric routes, environmental routes, air disturbances, etc. And then residential biofuel, coal burning, and biomass open fires. So modeling shows in domain that sources contribute 45 to 66% of black carbon deposition in HKH region, specifically the brick industry, solid fuel, and diesel. And then there have been some observations made in 2019 which shows that black carbon peaks in spring and fall, and from different sources of pollution, it drops in monsoon due to washout. So बारिशों से या बादल जब बनते हैं वो तो उसको थोड़ा कम कर देते हैं, but in the meantime, when there are no clouds, when there's no rain, when there's no snowfall happening, it exacerbates smelt. So modeling found that in black carbon induced albedo loss led to 40 we it's not always about building new dams. It's about how you manage your existing resources, how you go about, understanding that the water that is coming from glacier mass, the water that you're getting is your fresh water. The resources that you have there, they need to be protected first before you talk about building any additional storage. And how the communities living there, thriving on those resources, need to be protected. That is adaptation. So जो last mile वाली बात है, वो सबसे ज्यादा यहाँ पर अप्लाई होती है, your mountain communities. There are so many interventions happening, we'll discuss it, but then traditional glacier fed irrigation channels are becoming unreliable due to altered melt patterns. And then critical transport networks are increasingly at risk from floods, landslides, and glacier hazards. Every year tourists, they get stuck, even the local communities, although they understand this is the season of glove, this is the season of precipitation, but जब tourism वहां पे increase होता है तो वो लोग भी at risk आ जाते हैं. Warming induced permafrost degradation in GB is increasing landslide and rockfall frequency. Locally driven adaptation strategies are essential. Please, just एक message इस platform से, when we talk about adaptation, this is not an imported subject. Adaptation is something that communities already know, they understand. It's just that they need certain resources to scale up their um resilience building, to scale up those solutions that they already have. Plus, within the policies, unfortunately, हम लोगों ने ये वाले measures mention ही नहीं किए हुए, बताए हुए नहीं है. इसीलिए हमें लगता है when we are talking about adaptation or resilience building that this is some imported concept that we need to integrate. This is not. Emissions from wood-based cooking in remote areas of Gilgit-Baltistan increase black carbon. ये मैंने बता दिए. So the access to clean cooking is extremely crucial, not just for the glaciers या black carbon, but overall for sustainability, sustainable development mountain communities की इंश्योर करने के लिए. एयर पोल्यूशन हम सिर्फ समझते हैं यहाँ पर होती है, ग्लेशियर्स के पास भी एयर पोल्यूशन होती है, एंड वो कैसे ट्रांसपोर्ट होती है अदर रीजन्स में, दैट्स अ वेरी वेल एस्टैब्लिश्ड मैकेनिज्म. Conclusion. So we have followed similar warming trend as the global average during the past 100 years. Climate change has been happening, but it has exacerbated for countries like Pakistan. And it is not the case we have lower emissions. No, I think ये वाली line हमें अब थोड़ी पीछे कर लेनी चाहिए कि we do not produce emissions, but we are yet most vulnerable. हमारी emissions को अगर हम खुद compare करें, GCISC is sitting here, I'm sure they would respond to that. अगर हम पिछले 20 सालों से या 30 सालों से अपनी emissions को खुद assess करें, What do you think हमारी emissions किधर है? कम हो गई हैं, हमने कम की हैं, या बढ़ गई हैं? 2030 तक ठीक है, we have the right to do those emissions, but then keeping in view the global climate trajectory, where are we standing here? Is the stance correct that we do not produce emissions yet we are most vulnerable? Yes, global climate justice में this is correct, but in context of strengthening climate action, I think this needs to take a back seat now. This is coming from personal point of view, not representing my organizational point of view here, but just personally, this is what I feel should be, we need to change it. So thank you. This is a technical overview of, what is happening in the region. And as far as the latest weather extreme outlook is concerned, is saal, there's a chance of 30 to 60% starting May, I believe, or end of May, of El Nino being developed. So when El Nino gets developed, there are mostly higher temperatures, and there's a situation of wet bulb that also can get developed in your urban areas. So जब urban areas में wet bulb आता है, so north में भी impact होता है. Wet bulb means that if you have a temperature of 40 degrees Celsius, you might feel it like 45 or 50 degrees Celsius because of the humidity factor. And even in your northern areas, the daytime temperatures are increased. So when humidity is there, क्लाउड बर्स्ट कैसे होता है? जब ह्यूमिड एयर नॉर्थ एरियाज में ठंडी एयर के साथ जो है वो इंटरैक्ट करती है, और एकदम से वहां पे कंडीशंस फेवरेबल होती हैं, बादल आता है, छोटे रेडियस पे 100 mm बारिश या उससे ऊपर की बारिश 1 घंटे में या 1.5 घंटे में रिकॉर्ड हो जाना इज योर क्लाउड बर्स्ट. सो दिस इज हाउ इट गेट्स डेवलप. इट्स नॉट ऑलवेज global climate change, the local weather conditions as well. fueled by climate change because your El Nino and La Nina conditions are developed in your Pacific Ocean. So वो determine करते हैं आपके इधर बादल कितने आएंगे, कितनी बारिश होगी या drought कितना होगा. But interestingly, when El Nino is there, you do not expect, you usually expect के heat waves, droughts, but उसमें monsoon burst होते हैं. और monsoon burst आप cloud burst को, एकदम hailstorm burst को, एकदम इस तरह की जो अचानक बारिश हो जाती है उसको कहते हैं. So flash floods, urban floods, उसकी probability कम नहीं होती, increase हो जाती. So I'll stop here. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Zainab, for highlighting the region's glaciers are losing ice at nearly twice that since 2000, and black carbon and dust deposit accelerates melt 15 to 20% faster, and also highlighting how you are managing your existing resources. That is important. With this, now I would like to invite Mr. Zakir Hussain, Director General, Gilgit-Baltistan Disaster Management Authority. He has joined us online. Sir, my question to you is, what priority actions are being implemented to reduce Glacier Lake outburst floods risk in Gilgit-Baltistan? And also, how effective are current risk assessment frameworks in addressing emerging glacier hazards? Mr. Zakir
Thank
Hussain,
you.
sir,
Thank
over to
you.
you.
Thank you for taking me on this important occasion. I am just giving an overview of what happens when the GLOB events take.
Mr. Zakir Hussain, over to you, sir.
Am I audible? Am I audible?
Sir, we can't hear you.
Let me fix the issue.
Yes, now we can hear you.
Thank you so much for taking me on this important topic, glacial hazard adaptation in Gilgit-Baltistan, in particular, and in Pakistan in general. Dear audience, as you know, Gilgit-Baltistan is over-glaciated region of Pakistan, and it lies in the hinterland of HKH. So, Gilgit-Baltistan Disaster Management Authority, being the premier organization which deals with the GLOB events, cloud bursts, flash floods, and all the hazards which are linked to climate change. Coming to your question, the actions which are being taken on part of Gilgit-Baltistan Disaster Management Authority or on the part of other government departments in collaboration with the partner organizations. First of all, we must be clear that what is the difference between the climate change adaptation and disaster risk reduction. So we have to be clear enough that these are at many times converging. So being the disaster management authority, my priority would be to disaster risk reduction. So for that matter, we are taking certain steps which include soft activities as well as some hard activities, civil works. Coming to the first portion that is linked with the civil activities which are meant for creating awareness. Since we are living in these valleys, in these mountainous regions for centuries, and as one of the speakers mentioned, that it is inbuilt in our lives that we are adapted to these changes, because over the past 200 years, if you count, there are dozens of GLOB events which have devastated the downstream valleys, and there are a lot of topographic changes, geographic changes we can observe around us. So coming to focusing on what the actions are being taken. As I mentioned, we are making awareness in the communities because our main focus is communities to create resilience. That GLOBs we cannot stop because we cannot say that we can control climate change or this or that. We are not over-ambitious. Just we have to create awareness that community-based risk reduction is at the center of these climate adaptation ventures. So we had a good project called GLOB2, and that was meant for creating awareness in communities and build resilience in them. So there were awareness sessions, there were simulation exercises, there were seminars, and there were exposure visits, and there were engagement of media, how the information, the scientific research which is being carried out around the world is disseminated to the communities, and how they are supposed to prepare themselves for the coming challenges of GLOFs. So this is the soft part of the activities we are undertaking. Coming to the mitigation side, the hard activities, which of course they are not in the sense that the best treatment for these GLOFs, yet they have importance. For example, we have some GLOF related protective walls. Then this gives some psychological satisfaction to the communities who are living downstream and low-lying areas. At least they can say that these protective walls can save their lands, their agricultural land, their houses. But sometimes the huge GLOF takes away everything. And we witness, we cannot help it. So similarly, we have some safe havens identified that in event of such GLOFs, we have to take care of the lives, they are protected. So we have identified through this GLOF project about more than dozens of safe havens in shape of schools, in shape of safe site buildings, so that at least they can save their lives when such events take place. Similarly, we have other interventions. I hope there are presentation of Forest Department, because this GLOF had a multi-sectoral approach that have been taken care of by Forest Department. They have done some slope stabilization so that in event of any GLOF event, at least the topography that is vulnerable to the much erosion may be at least stabilized through plantations, mass plantations. So these were some activities which were on hard side and a soft side. But the center point of this project was the early warning system. So as the United Nations slogan is that by 2027, early warning for all. So it was a meager effort on part of Gilgit-Baltistan government to be able to request the donors, the climate fund to come here and help us in installation of early warning systems. And we are glad and we are proud to share that at this moment, we have at least 179 and 180 early warning systems, which include glacial melting measurements, rain and precipitation measurements are being transferred to PMD headquarters, and from there we receive the early warnings. So we have an integrated system, and but we are not satisfied, because the catchment area which was meant was very limited. You know, Gilgit-Baltistan is consisting of 72,000 square kilometers, and we identified just 16 valleys. So yes, this is a right step in right direction, but we have to travel a lot in this direction to cover a lot of areas which are uncovered through this GLOF2 project. And we are in the pipeline that with the help of our Chinese friends, we are again identifying some valleys which were left over in previous identification. So it is a long journey, and we have to together synergize our resources to combat and to cope up with the onslaught of climate change. So these are some areas which I might have been able to bring forth in the forum that we are taking, but it is, as I said, it is an uphill task. So we are engaged, and we are hoping that the partners will come up with their suggestions, with their guidance, so that at national level as well as at provincial level, last but not least, the district level, which is the prime responding agencies, my district disaster management authorities, they are actively participating, and we are doing some actions on ground so that the mitigation work is on, and we will be able to save our populations, our agricultural land, our forests from the degradation. So
Sir,
I
I
think
request, can you please close your remarks within 1 minute?
this was about the first part of your question. That is, I am concluding with the humble submission that we are taking both hard and soft activities, prioritizing our actions, climate actions in mitigation and disaster risk reduction. Coming to your second question, that is, are you satisfied with the current framework of assessments and frameworks? No, I am not satisfied because I have no socio-economic environmental framework right at the moment. So I am looking forward to help, to get help from the organizations, the donor agencies. They are helping us to build up a framework that covers all SEs, socio-economic and environmental factors, so that it will be a holistic approach. And it is not just a webinar is solving this problem. We should come on ground and see the best practices. Just I was studying what happened in 2010 in Peru and what happened in our own area in District Nagar. So this is glacial adaptation stage. There are a lot of studies, but we need to be focused and tailor-made according to our own needs in Gilgit-Baltistan. This is from my side. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir, for highlighting socio-economic environmental frameworks are very important for Gilgit-Baltistan while in addressing the community-based adaptation plans for the local communities. With this, now I would like to invite Mr. Khadim Hussain. He is Director, Environmental Protection Agency, Gilgit-Baltistan. He has also joined us online. Sir, my question to you is, to what extent do existing environmental policies incorporate glacier-specific risk? And what are the regulatory gaps hinder effective glacier adaptation implementation in Gilgit-Baltistan? Mr. Khadim Hussain, over to you, sir.
Assalamu alaikum. बहुत शुक्रिया, Madam Neelam. I would like to, build my story, the comments of Dr. Zakir साहब. चूँकि ग्लेशियर्स और इनके ऊपर बहुत ज़्यादा बात होती है, we normally usually इस तरह की gatherings में बात करते हैं, but the people who are, living with glaciers and glaciers or living with the people, they are not part of such discussions in actual. तो हमें बेसिकली जो लोग इन ग्लेशियर्स के साथ रहते हैं और ये जो ग्लेशियर्स हैं जिन लोगों के साथ रहते हैं, जिनके साथ एक सिम्बायोटिक रिलेशनशिप है, उसको स्टडी करने की नीड है. फर्स्ट वी हैव टू स्टडी द सिम्बायोटिक synergistic relationship of the local indigenous communities with these glaciers, and these glaciers are living with these communities. This is the specific specialty of Gilgit-Baltistan and Pakistan. These longest glaciers are along your highways and main, international expressways. So ये जो specialty है, जो एक strength है हमारी, at the same time it's a weakness भी है हमारी. चूँकि मैं आपको दो चीज़ें, जो legislation का part है, provincial government का, federal government का, then जो indigenous customary laws हैं, these customary laws normally usually strengthen the government and the institutions to implement so many rules, laws, and regulations to regulate these, sensitive strategic resources. In real sense or in true sense, we are not, incorporating all these, indigenous customary laws into practice. जिसकी वजह से हमें ये इश्यूज आते हैं. हम एडेप्टेशन की बात करते हैं, मिटिगेशन की बात करते हैं, डॉक्यूमेंट्स बनाते हैं, लेकिन हमें द रियल साइंस बिहाइंड दीज ग्लेशियर मेल्ट्स और इनके पास उसका हमें नहीं पता होता है. द रियल साइंस जो है, अब देखें, आप गिलगित बल्तिस्तान और पाकिस्तान में 13,000 ग्लेशियर्स हैं, 8,000 ग्लेशियर्स गिलगित बल्तिस्तान में हैं. अब इन 8,000 ग्लेशियर्स का के साथ जो आपका सारा आइस मास है वो भी इसके साथ एसोसिएटेड है। आपकी पीटलैंड्स और आपकी जो परमाफ्रॉस्ट है दैट इज आल्सो एसोसिएटेड विद दिस ग्लेशियर्स। परमाफ्रॉस्ट वी यूजुअली हम इसको मिस करते हैं, हम उसको बिल्कुल स्टडी नहीं करते हैं, उसको छोड़ देते हैं। अब ये जो ग्लेशियर मेल्टिंग या जो सुपरफिशियल स्टडीज आती हैं जो 1 महीने 1.5 महीने की, बहुत सारे जो बाहर से रिसर्चर्स आते हैं वो कहीं 1 महीने 2 महीने के लिए प्लेस होते हैं, स्टडी करते हैं, चले जाते हैं, वो लेजिटिमेट और रियल साइंस नहीं होती। रियल साइंस, लेजिटिमेट साइंस वो होती है जो कम्युनिटीज और सेंचुरीज उन ग्लेशियर्स के साथ रहते हैं, उनकी जो इंडिजिनस नॉलेज है वो रियल साइंस है, वो एडेप्टेशन भी उनके पास है, उसकी मिटिगेशन भी उनके पास है। इन ग्लेशियर्स का जो बिहेवियर है ओवर द ईयर जो चेंज हुआ है वो भी वही कम्युनिटी स्टडी करती है। क्योंकि ये जो गिलगित बल्तिस्तान का जो माउंटेनियस रीजन है दैट इज वेरी कम्प्लेक्स और बहुत ज्यादा इसकी स्पेशलिटी है, और उस कम्प्लेक्स सिस्टम को स्टडी करने के लिए आप उस कम्प्लेक्स सिस्टम के साथ जो एसोसिएटेड हैबिटाट है उसको स्टडी करना बहुत जरूरी है। विद दिस कमेंट्स, जो गिलगित बल्तिस्तान में रूल्स रेगुलेशंस हैं, एनवायरमेंटल प्रोटेक्शन एक्ट है हमारा, ग्लेशियर्स को एड्रेस करता है, फॉरेस्ट एक्ट है, ग्लेशियर को एड्रेस करता है। गिलगित बल्तिस्तान क्लाइमेट चेंज स्ट्रेटजी एक्शन प्लान में जो थीमेटिक थीम 14 है वो स्पेसिफिक ग्लेशियर्स को एड्रेस करता है। थीम 14 में माउंटेन्स एंड ग्लेशियर्स हैं, उसमें शॉर्ट टर्म, लॉन्ग टर्म, मिड टर्म स्ट्रेटजीज हैं कि हमने क्या करना है, एस्टेब्लिशमेंट ग्लेशियर प्रोटेक्शन को कैसे करें, हम ग्लेशियर मेल्टिंग को कैसे एड्रेस करें, एज ए प्रोटेक्टेड एरियाज हम किस तरह ग्लेशियर्स को डिक्लेयर करें। जैसे हम नेशनल पार्क को डिक्लेयर करते हैं एज ए प्रोटेक्टेड एरिया, हम ग्लेशियर को भी प्रोटेक्टेड एरिया डिक्लेयर करें। इसकी जो एग्जांपल्स हैं, ताजिकिस्तान में इसको लेजिस्लेट किया है 2024 में, लॉ ऑन ग्लेशियर प्रोटेक्शन टू रेगुलेट डेवलपमेंट एंड प्रोहिबिट एक्टिविटीज लाइक माइनिंग एंड अदर एक्टिविटीज इन सेंसिटिव आईसी एंड ग्लेशियर्ड एरियाज। अर्जेंटाइन में 2010 में नेशनल ग्लेशियर प्रोटेक्शन लॉ प्रोमलगेट हुआ है और इस ग्लेशियर को नेशनल स्ट्रेटेजिक एसेट्स डिक्लेयर किए गए हैं। और हमारे जो नेशनल स्ट्रेटेजिक एसेट्स हैं हम उनको रुथलेस उसको हम तबाह कर रहे हैं विद मैस टूरिज्म, विद अननेसेसरी फेस्टिविटीज हम अरेंज करते हैं under the supervision of government like me, like you, and like Zakir Saab and tourism department. We are all the culprits who are, ruining this very sensitive strategic asset of Pakistan. We all are, culprits. हम सब अपने आने वाले बच्चों के मुजरिम हैं, इसमें हम सब हैं, इसमें जितने यहाँ पे बैठे हैं हम सब हैं। क्योंकि हम न ग्लेशियर को प्रोटेक्शन पे काम करते हैं, हम सुपरफिशियल काम करते हैं। वी आर नॉट इवन सिंगल पेपर हमारी किसी यूनिवर्सिटी से ब्लैक कार्बन एक्यूमुलेशन एंड आइस हम नहीं कभी उस पे पेपर पब्लिश करते। हमारी 90% कम्युनिटीज दे आर लिविंग विद दिस ग्लेशियर एरियाज विदाउट एनी एनर्जी सिक्योरिटी। गिलगित बल्तिस्तान में सिंस अक्टूबर टिल डेट वी आर फेसिंग 22 आवर्स very lethal and disastrous load shedding। अब जब आप एनर्जी सिक्योरिटी डिस्पाइट हैविंग एनॉर्मस पोटेंशियल ऑफ हाइड्रो पावर प्रोटेक्शन अलोंग रिवर बैंक्स आपकी हो सकती है, आप सोलर पे कर सकते हैं। हमारी कम्युनिटीज जो ग्लेशियर के आसपास जो छोटी सी शब है उसको भी काटते हैं, उसके जो ट्रीज हैं उसको काटते हैं, क्योंकि उनकी सर्वाइवल की जंग है, उन्होंने 6 से 8 महीने जिंदा रहना है। अब ये जो बर्निंग होती है जहाँ पे लकड़ी अवेलेबल है, दे आर बर्निंग द वुड अदर देन जाकिर साहब इज हियर। Peatlands are one of the major carbon sinks। 80% आपकी कार्बन peatlands में सिंक होती है। Peatlands इन देवसाई, इन शंदूर, इन तेरू, इन गिजर, इन सारे एरियाज में हम शंदूर फेस्टिवल अरेंज करते हैं, हम देवसाई फेस्टिवल अरेंज करते हैं, हम रामा फेस्टिवल अरेंज करते हैं अंडर द सुपरविजन ऑफ द गवर्नमेंट एजेंसीज। सो वी आर द एक्चुअल कल्प्रिट्स। तो हमें जब तक ये फेस्टिविटीज और हमें अपनी जो पसंद के लिए जो एक्शंस हम करते हैं उसको हम खत्म नहीं करेंगे, न
Sir, I
WWF
request if you can wrap up your interventions in 1 minute.
मैं इसकी शेयर कर रहा हूँ, ये जी चीजें आपसे शेयर कर रहा हूँ, इसके ऊपर STPI और जो एजेंसीज है ना, इसके ऊपर अगर आप कंसिडर करेंगे तो हमारे ग्लेशियर्स भी प्रोटेक्ट होंगे, ग्लेशियर एडेप्टेशन भी होंगी और क्लाइमेट एडेप्टेशन भी होगी। क्योंकि जब तक आप फेडरल लेवल पे ये जो फेस्टिविटीज है अननेसेसरी, हमारा जो 90% कम्युनिटी ना वो एनिमल डंग यूज करती है ग्लेशियर एरियाज के आसपास जलाने के लिए, वो सारी ब्लैक कार्बन इन ग्लेशियर्स के ऊपर जाके एक्यूमुलेट होती है। और ये जो ग्लॉफ का फिनोमिना है ना, दैट इज नॉट इन एक्चुअल। आप हसनाबाद नाले में आप जाएं, देयर लास्ट का कोई क्लाउड नहीं था वहां पे, क्लाउड आउट ब्रश था 90% एरियाज में, ये एक नॉर्मल फिनोमिना था। अब वो इंटेंस इसलिए हो रहा है कि हमने ग्रीन बेल्ट्स को खत्म किया है, हमने वेजिटेशन को खत्म किया है, हमने वहां पे होटल्स बनाए हैं, हमने वहां पे रेस्ट हाउसेस बनाए हैं। मैक्सिमम गवर्नमेंट के, प्राइवेट इदारों के, मुख्तलिफ इदारों के रेस्ट हाउसेस इन दीज सेंसिटिव एरियाज हैं। हमें जो क्लाइमेट चेंज स्ट्रेटेजी के लिए हमारे एक रूल्स हैं, एस्का, एस्टेब्लिशमेंट ऑफ टूरिस्ट facilities and other infrastructure at ecologically sensitive and critical area rules 223, उसमें क्लियर कट मैंडेट है, उसमें एडमिनिस्ट्रेशन भी है, ईपीए भी है, डिजास्टर भी है। कोई भी आप डेवलपमेंट इन इदारों की इन SOPs के बगैर नहीं कर सकते। 100 मीटर ग्लेशिएटेड एरियाज के आसपास कोई एक्टिविटी आप नहीं कर सकते। रिवर बेल्ट के आसपास 50-100 फीट के आसपास कोई एक्टिविटी नहीं कर सकते। हमें अपने जो रूल्स रेगुलेशंस हैं उनको ट्रू एंड लेटेस्ट स्पिरिट हम इंप्लीमेंट करेंगे तो एडेप्टेशन भी हो जाएगी।
Apologies, Khadim Hussain sahab, आपके points they're all very valid, but we have other speakers too. We want to take their interventions. I'd request if you stay with
Yeah.
us, and we can have you in the end as well. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Khadim Hussain, for highlighting. We do need to understand the people living with glaciers and the glaciers living with the people. So with this now, I would like to invite Mr. Sabiuddin. He is a cryosphere expert from NDMA. Sir, my question to you is, what improvements are needed in hazard mapping and risk modeling for glacier-prone regions? And also, how can glacier hazards better integrated into national disaster risk reduction frameworks? Mr. Sabiuddin, over to you, sir.
Am I audible to you guys?
Ji, you are audible.
Yeah. Sure. Thank you, Neelam, for this opportunity. So I will start. मैं अपना थोड़ा सा तारुफ करूँगा. So I'm Sabiuddin. I'm working as a cryosphere specialist at National Institute of Disaster Management (NDMA). So हम सब जानते हैं, as we all know, that Pakistan, sits at the heart of HKH region, जहाँ पे more than 13,000 of glaciers और जो कवरिंग एरिया है वो 15,000 स्क्वायर किलोमीटर है, जो कि फीड करता है बहुत सारे मिलियंस ऑफ द पीपल डाउनस्ट्रीम। सो ये ग्लेशियर हमारे लिए इम्पोर्टेंट क्यों है? जिस तरह से खादिम साहब ने और जाकिर साहब ने भी बात की कि वी आर द पीपल हु बिलोंग टू दीज एरियाज। हम विक्टिम्स हैं इन डिजास्टर्स के, इन हैजर्ड्स के। सो अकॉर्डिंग टू रिसर्च, जो माउंटेन एनवायरनमेंट होती है वो बहुत ज़्यादा डिफरेंट होता है प्लेन के एरियो से ज़्यादा। मैं थोड़ा सा इसको इंट्रोडक्शन दे रहा हूँ ताकि आई विल देन गो टू द DRR पॉलिसी जो आपने सवाल पूछेंगे। आई विल गिव यू द preamble of this. So if there is that we seen that 0.8 सेंटीग्रेड जो है वो इंक्रीज हुआ है 1984 से लेकर 2015 तक टेम्परेचर। सो एवरी राइज इन टेम्परेचर में हमारे जो ग्लेशियर या नॉर्दर्न माउंटेन कम्युनिटीज हैं वो ज़्यादा इम्पैक्ट हो रहे हैं। एक रिसर्च है जिसके अंदर कहते हैं कि 1 सेंटीग्रेड अगर राइज करता है माउंटेन रीजन्स के अंदर, तो वो बेसिकली जो स्नो लाइन है वो मूव अपवर्ड बाय अराउंड 150 मीटर्स। सो कि आप इस अंदाजा
सब आपकी आवाज में
लगा
डिस्टॉर्शन
सकते
है।
हैं
आप
कि हम कितने ज्यादा इम्पैक्टेड हैं। सो द we must confront despite the seriousness of मेरी आवाज आ रही है आपको?
जी, अभी आ रही है।
हेलो। सो जो ग्लेशियर हैजर्ड हैं पाकिस्तान के अंदर, वहाँ पे कुछ गैप्स हैं मेरे ख्याल से। एक तो हम अनरिप्रेजेंटेड इन द नेशनल जो रिस्क असेसमेंट्स होते हैं वो हमारे पास नहीं है। गिलगित बल्तिस्तान के अंदर कुछ सब बेसिन लेवल पे जहाँ पे ग्लेशियर हैजर्ड्स हैं वहाँ बेसिन लेवल पे पॉलिसीज नहीं है। पॉलिसी शुड एड्रेस द ग्राउंड रियलिटी जो हमारे GB KP के AJK के अंदर हैं, उनके प्रॉब्लम्स को नहीं हो रहा। वीकली जो है ना इंटीग्रेटेड है हमारा जो DLR प्लानिंग है। इसी तरीके से और जो रियल टाइम मॉनिटरिंग है वो भी। आप ये देखें कि जो ग्लोव हैजर्ड है, वो ग्लोव हैजर्ड जो है वो 2300 मीटर से लेकर 5500 मीटर तक, ये बेसिकली एक जनरल जोन होती है ग्लोव की। उनमें से जो मोरेन डैम्ड होते हैं वो 2300 से लेकर 4500 मीटर तक होते हैं। सो इन जो हमारे अर्ली वार्निंग स्टेशन लगाई जाती हैं वो नीचे लो लेवल पे लगाई जाती हैं, जिसकी वजह से हमारे पास रियल टाइम डेटा, स्कैरसिटी ऑफ डेटा है। अच्छा जी, दूसरी बात जो है हमारा जो डेटा स्कैरसिटी है, डेटा हम सारों के पास है। ये झूठ बोलते हैं कि हमारे पास डेटा नहीं है। उस जितना डेटा है उस डेटा के अंदर हम शेयर नहीं करते एक दूसरे के साथ। एवरी पर्सन, एवरी ऑर्गेनाइजेशन इज वर्किंग इन देयर ओन साइलोस, राइट? सो हर कोई अपना अपना साइलोस में काम कर रहा है। डेटा शेयरिंग कोई सेंटर नहीं है। सो आई रिक्वेस्ट कि हम अपनी पॉलिसीज के अंदर, DRR पॉलिसीज के अंदर ऐसे प्लेटफॉर्म बनाए जहां पे हम डेटा शेयरिंग प्लेटफॉर्म्स हों।
थैंक यू सो मच
Am I
सभी।
audible?
जी जी जी, नाउ यू आर ऑडिबल। आपका कोई और पॉइंट है? वी थॉट यू हैव फिनिश्ड, क्योंकि आवाज नहीं आ रही थी।
ओह सॉरी, अब लास्ट आई थिंक हमने मिस किया, लेकिन एट द लास्ट आई विल से दैट पॉलिसीज बहुत ज़्यादा हैं। देयर इज़ अ सेंडाई फ्रेमवर्क है हमारे पास, UN DRR कम्प्रिहेंसिव रिस्क मैनेजमेंट हैं, पॉलिसीज बहुत हैं, बट देयर इज लेक इन द इम्प्लीमेंटेशन ऑफ दीज पॉलिसीज एट द ग्राउंड लेवल पे ये हमारे लेक करती हैं। सो एट द एंड आई विल से that the glaciers is not only a piece of ice. For mountain communities, it's our food, it's our water, it's our culture, and it's a future as well. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Now for the technical and research-based analysis, I would like to invite Ms. Kuratulain Ahmed. She is heading Water Resources and Glaciology section at Global Climate Change Impact Studies Center. Ms. Kuratulain, over to you.
Thank you. Can I have a control on the presentation, please? Presentation, if you can display the presentation, please. Assalamualaikum, very good morning. Thank you. First of all, I would like to thank you, SDBI, for convening this very important session. And to answer the asked question, I will take you along the presentation to give you some visuals that what's actually happening in the region. Sorry. Okay, so basically in this presentation, I'm going to present some of the science-based research analysis in the HKH region, and I will try to find out that what are the implications, what can have effects on our water availability, flood risk, which are crucial for the glacier adaptation planning. Okay. Okay, and the main research question driving this research is that how can integrated high-resolution climate data and research remote sensing GIS analytics inform Pakistan glacier adaptation plan through hotspots identification and risk-informed decision, making it very crucial for the implementation and the planning of the plan for glaciers. Okay, so this brings us first to the Pakistan major climate change related concerns. Why this is crucial? Because until we are fully aware from the problems, we cannot go for the solution. So the major climate change related issues in Pakistan is increased monsoon variability, projected recession of HCH glaciers, threatened Indus River system flows, increased risk from the climate extremes, which counts on floods, drought, heat waves, etc. Then we have a sea level intrusion, water scarcity, energy, food, and deforestation. These are also the climate change related issues. And top of that, the weather events, which were known as extremes like 2 decades before, now becoming the new normal. So, and when we talk about the climate change related issues, so water is the most sensitive driver, which brings actually all changes in our environmental situation. So one of the major water resource related challenge is the data scarcity, Krakram anomaly. Like I would go with the, like Mr. Sabiuddin, he said very openly that we all are like having data, jhoot bolte hain, but we don't have any policies. And unfortunately, I would like to share one of my learning from a forum where it has been said that Pakistan is the graveyard of policies. Unfortunately, we have so many policies, but the problem is the integration and then its implication. Okay, and the second water-related issue is the heavy dependence of Indus River flows on HKH glaciers. Third one is the low storage capacity. We have only 30 days storage capacity. In case of any situation, we don't have water for the survival. Then decreasing water per capita water availability, less than 1,000 cubic meter per person, which is very alarming for water availability. Then we have a transboundary issues, and then we have depleting groundwater reservoirs and water quality. All these are the water related issues, and all together climate water related issues. So the floods, droughts and heat waves, these are the major climate change related issues in Pakistan, which are actually threatening our cryosphere reserves. Okay, so because we know that whatever is happening upstream is affecting our water availability downstream. So it is important to know that what is the actually situation in the HKH glaciers. As per the recent EVK2 senior glacier inventory, 13,000 glaciers has been mapped. 1 to 2 million people directly depending on these HKH water system, because 60 to 70% of Indus River flows are coming from snow and glacier melt from this region. And then these panels gives you the picture that actually what is the major spatial distribution of snow and glaciers in this HKH region and how much is contributed to the downstream water availability. And from upper panels, you can see that about 75% of the HKH glaciarized area is in the Karakoram, which is followed by Hindu Kush and Himalayas. And similarly, if we see about the snow component, which is like the annual phenomena, seasonal activity, so about 35 to 42% of the snow coverage is in the HKH region, and with the large interannual variability from -6 to 6. So like we have all these snow and glacier resources, what can be utilized positively, but unfortunately, due to the lack of understanding, the lack of their assessments, we are unable to cope with these issues. Okay, I'm sorry. Okay, so this slide gives you the impression about the glacial patterns in HKH region. Again, these two slides are from the latest AVK2 CNR glacier inventory. On the left-hand side, we can see that there are 4 main glaciers, Batura, Pasu, Gulmit, and Gulkin, which are showing a rapid decrease in their snout. On the other hand, on the right-hand side, you can see a glacier where you can see a visible increase or surge of the glacier snout. So like from these assessments, we can see that the glacier changes occurring in HKH region are not uniform. So this underscores the need for detailed range-specific assessments, which can be recommended for the glacier adaptation plan. Okay, so before moving on, it is important to understand what are the climate patterns in the region. If we look for on the left-hand side, we have a spatial patterns of temperature, upper panel, and the lower precipitation panel. We can see a large diversity from east to west and from north to south. And on the right-hand side, we have a climatological patterns for the 4 ranges. And here we can see that the Hindu Kush is the warmest in the range, and Karakoram is the coldest. Unfortunately, most of the assessments are at the annual scale and on the average basis of the whole HK, which is unjust, I guess, for this region to say like the temperature is either increasing or decreasing, because we have different climate signal in all ranges. And okay, so this slide gives you the impression about the temperature projections and changes in HKH region under 2 emission scenario. The left panel shows you temperature profiles and the change under SSP 245 emission scenario, and on the right hand side we can have the projection under business as usual scenario. So it is observed that Hindu Kush range is showing the highest rise of temperature up to 5.4 degree in 30 years by the end of 21st century under high emission scenario. And Karakoram is observed to be consistently cold because the mean temperature is around 0 degree, although temperature increase is there in Karakoram as well, but still it stays the coldest among all 3 ranges. Similarly, these are the precipitation projections, which are for the 245 scenario on the left-hand side, and the right-hand panel showing you precipitation projections under high emission scenario. And we can see that there is not linear increase in precipitation when we talk about the medium-term scenario, but on the other side, there is a large linear increase in precipitation with the largest increase observed in Himalayas and UIB. And if we see like the Karakoram, which is like the most controversial range in the edge case, that either it is unstable or increasing or retreating. So we have find the observation that with the coldest temperature, there are still precipitation increasing. So somewhat we can relate it with the its dynamic cryospheric behavior. Similarly, we have also tried to identify what are the spatial distribution patterns of wet and dry extremes based on SPEI. SPEI basically gives you the impression about the possible occurrences of wetter and dry situation in the region. The consistent positive values can be linked with the high runoff flows and can be linked with the GLOF events. And similarly, the persistent negative values can deal with the water stress situation, can be linked with the drought. And if we move from control to future under high emission scenario, so we can see that the Karakoram, which is basically most controversial, more talked about but less studied region, here the probability of occurrencing more floods is increasing. So this is alarming situation. We need to think about at like the local time and location specific assessments are required before moving on for some recommendation for the glacier adaptation plan. Okay, so based on my research findings, what are the main points? Like high elevation snow cover remains persistently in the Western Karakoram and Upper Himalayas, and with the high interannual variability of snow, and from 35 to 42% overall in a year. And there is an increased intensity and extent of SPEI, like the wetter and drought situation in southwestern HKH region, with the Indus Basin as the most vulnerable to the heat wave. Why this is very much alarming? Because 60 to 70% of our flows are coming from the snow glacier melt in this Indus River system, and up to 90% of water we withdraw for agriculture purpose from this Indus River. So this is very alarming. We need to work on it in the deeper look. And then Hindu Kush is the warmest with a 5.4 degree rise of temperature by the end of century under high emission. Karakoram stays the coldest, although rise of temperature is there, but still it stays the coldest among three ranges. UIB warms sharply from 4.3 degree under SSP 245 to 9.7 degree. Overall, the rise is very high, as I guess Ms. Zainab has tried to make the point. The global warming is there, but the regional rise of temperature is even higher. And if we go about the global to regional and regional to national scale, so even rise of temperature in the northern areas is even higher, which is actually alarming for our water resource dependency on these resources. And the precipitation rises across all the ranges, somewhat uncertain pattern, but still it is showing the linear increase under high emission scenario. Okay, so based on my research findings, these are the key recommendations. What can we maybe consider for inclusion in glacier adaptation? There is a dire need for strengthening integrated glacier and snow monitoring. And then there is a need to prioritize GLOF risk mapping, upgrade glacial lake inventories, and targeted risk reduction in vulnerable valleys in the basins. There is a need to develop a basin scale early warning system. I guess one of our speakers has already talked about this early warning system. In GLOF 1, 2, we have some examples from the early warning system, but the selection of 16 valleys does not justify the big area. So there is a need to expand this network and to go on the local scale. And then enhance institutional coordination and regional cooperation to have this glacier assessments based on, this is my research findings. And if you have any question, suggestion, feedback, so thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Kuratulan. It shows we have a very alarming findings. So these scientific findings shows that how much it is important we have a climate adaptation plan. So with this technical overview on the health of glaciers and the influencing glacier dynamics, now for the community perspective, I would like to invite Ms. Aisha Khan. She is Executive Director, Civil Society Coalition for Climate Change. Ms. Aisha Khan, my question to you would be, what are the key challenges faced by local communities in adapting glacier-related risk, and how can indigenous knowledge be integrated into the formal adaptation planning processes? Over to you, ma'am.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Zainab, for the comprehensive overview that set the tone for this conversation. If you permit, I'm going to go a little beyond the question that you've asked me, because I've been working with mountain communities for 25 years, and I've been trekking in heavily glaciated mountain regions from Ascole to the base camp of the 5 mountains that we have in the Karakoram region. So I have, lived experience of observations that I have seen, which now are corroborating with the science that is coming out. So I would like to share that with you. So I think the first thing that we need to understand when we look at our own glaciers is that climate change is one aspect. That's a global phenomena that is not within our control. So I think we need to kind of have a bifurcation between what are the national actions that are contributing to glacial melt and what are the regional aspects also that we need to take into account. Because unless we don't take a HKH perspective overview of this entire third pole and the cryosphere, we will not be able to take any meaningful steps in moving towards adaptation. The second thing that I want to mention about to highlight the importance of why adaptation to glaciers is very important for us is because we are a single river, single basin, lower riparian country. Therefore, the Indus that receives nearly 50 to 60% of its water, which is our lifeline, comes from snow and glacial melt. So it is in our national interest to pay very high attention and urgency to the management of how we take this whole process forward. Now, when we talk about, adaptation, I think before that we have to talk about the glacier monitoring strategy as well, because unless we don't know what we are measuring, we'll not be able to manage what we are intending. So a research architecture to establish a robust scientific baseline is very, very important. We have scientists in the panel over here, and you have explained it very well, that when we're looking at glacier, basically we need to look at the mass balance, we need to use remote sensors and geospatial analysis, we need to focus on black carbon and the deposition studies if we have conducted any, and the cryohydrological modeling to say, what is happening to the mountains does not stay in the mountains. It affects our coastline and affects our sea level rise as well. And then finally, the socio-ecological research part of it. I think we should also remember when we talk about adaptation that defining the scope of adaptation should remain an evolving scientific process, because it has to be iterative, it has to be responsive for us to be able to constantly manage. Now, let me share, some of my personal experiences, because we all know that food, water, energy, disasters are the sectors that get affected. So we need to have adaptation outcomes which go across sectors in an integrated way. In water supplies, what I have seen are the changing patterns that are affecting the hydrological cycle. The timing is changed, the quantity has changed, the volume has changed, and that has a direct bearing on the food security of these mountain communities. Let us not forget that in our northern regions, for example, the Gilgit-Baltistan area, 94% is covered by mountains, and there's only 2% that is left for agriculture. So it is terraced agriculture. It is a high altitude region. There is shorter cropping season. So any variability in the flow of water is going to directly have an impact on food security. Let me just give, an example that in areas, in communities where we have gone and delivered irrigation supply schemes, whether piped or paved, has transformed that landscape completely. The mountain communities are resilient. They manage everything else. They do not have 60 lakhs, 80 lakhs, for example, to build a irrigation scheme. So all that we need to do is to channel that water and store it for them so that they can use it at the right time for their crop cultivation. They do the rest themselves. They lay the transmission lines. For food security, I think where they need help is in moving towards climate smart agriculture. We need to focus on soil samples for them. We need to provide guidance to them on tunnel farming, on greenhouse farming, on how to plant the crops that go with their soil, because the soil composition will tell you what is the best kind of agricultural practice which they can and should follow. The energy systems are very important because of the black carbon, and we should also look at the other forms of carbon that are being deposited or other factors that are contributing. Now, like I told you, when I was younger and I used to trek up and down the Baltoro Glacier, every year I would have to change my route because there would be a meltdown, there would be a lake formation. So when they say there are no changes taking place in the Karakoram glaciers, I will contest that from my own experience, because in the 6 years that I went every year and I trekked from the village to these high mountains, I had to change my route because there would be lake formations along the way. So we have to understand why are these lake formations taking place, and the heavy tourism, that is another thing that takes place in this region from May to September. About 3,000 or 5,000 people concentrated move in this region. They use kerosene fuel over there on the glaciers, and the human activity and the presence of military because of its being a conflict zone also contributes. So there are permanent organic pollutants that are being contributed that come down and are part of the drinking water which these communities use. So we need to think of these issues as well. The Central Karakoram National Park is there. It is functional, but it is not being optimized to protect the environment as it should. For example, if we look at the peak royalty of what we charge for K2, we are focusing more on trying to show how many number of expeditions come there. We are not thinking of charging more from those expeditions and reducing the numbers so we reduce the carbon footprint. So these are the things that we need to look at, and the land use plan, the grazing patterns. One of the things that I have noticed within the communities where I work is the growth of the population and the imbalance between supply and demand. The growth factor is putting an additional stress on these resources, which is creating a lot of these problems for them, because they are unable now to use the local resources for their own needs. Moving forward, I think it is very important when we talk about, and I think one of our previous speakers mentioned that people who live there understand their land, they understand their needs, they understand their ecology. So when we're talking about protection glaciers, what we're really looking at is how do they affect the ecosystems, and how does it affect the communities that rely on those ecosystems. So unless we don't protect all three together and we make the local community the local stewards for the protection of their own environment, nothing that we plan and talk about over here is going to work. But local community ownership also means understanding their constraints. I'll give you my personal example. The first time I went for a trek in that region, I was appalled by the degradation, and I was appalled by the state of hygiene of the mountain communities, not bathing and destroying the local environment and cutting the trees for their own fuel wood, till they asked me to live with them. And I lived in one of these remote villages with no water, no electricity, no toilets, nothing, just like one of them in a tent for 3 months. I can tell you I did not bathe during that time. I would put a bucket of water to warm it enough to barely sponge myself, not to have a bad smell. I was also gathering the same woods, the same firewood. I was living exactly. So it's very easy to dictate terms to say, do this, do that, without having the experience of living in a community that doesn't even have basic municipal services, no access to clean drinking water, no drainage, none of the things that we take for granted. So I think this localization of knowledge is very important. We have to translate all this complex science of the cryosphere that we talk about when we discuss these things into simpler languages and show the communities how do you link your ecology with your economy, so it's a win-win for both of them. Because if it's a win for the ecology and it's losses for them, they're not going to care about that ecology. That is very, very important. And incentivizing those sustainable practices, for example, the way I did it was I developed fixed camps along the Baltoro Glacier, and I made the local communities in charge. They now charge a camping fee, which gives them revenue, which incentivizes them to keep the camping area clean, to segregate the waste. So the better they keep the camps running, the more revenue they earn. So it incentivized them. If I had just told them to do it for the environment, they wouldn't have done it. Now it's making money for them, they are doing it. But again, the institutions that we make responsible for looking after, like the Central Karakoram National Park, has not worked closely with the community. They come from the top with a set of regulations without taking local sensitivities into account. So the community refuses to trust them, rejects them, and does not collaborate with them. So now we have two parallel functions over there. One, the communities are managing on their own, one, the CKNP, which creates confusion for the tourists. Just a couple of more points. Women-led resource governance is extremely important. We know that women do all the work in that area, but we know that they do not have the agency to make decisions. How do we bring them on that platform? There's a lot of male out-migration taking place in regions as a result of climate-induced, whether it's hazards or whether it's 6 months anyway for the winter season when they don't have any job or opportunity for employment. Behavior change and advocacy campaigns are also very important, but I think the most important is perhaps participatory decision making. We do not bring these people on the table, sit with them, ask them what their needs, priorities are, and build the plan around that. We have a very good, at the end of the day, policy or plan that we develop, but there is no buy-in from the local community. So I think that, simple things like we know of how ice stupas are made, but nobody goes in there to work with the local communities to tell them how to make the ice stupas. So, so we talk about grander things, but we don't talk about the local small baby steps that need to be done, where you need to go and engage with the community and decide, whether you're going to give them an irrigation scheme, whether you're going to give them a flood protection wall, or whether you're going to give them safe drinking water. Because in my 25 years, what I have seen is that in the first 5 years, their focus was health education. They would ask you, help us with health education. Now these three, flood protection has become their number one priority. And you can see the direct link with accelerated melting of the glaciers. They want to protect their assets. And then food protection. They want to have a policy which allows them to be able to continue with the agricultural. So I would, in the end, just recommend that while you're focusing on your adaptation plan for the glaciers, it's a good thing to do that locally, but expand it regionally. But the final aim should be to make the cryosphere part of the global stocktake. That is the only way eventually that you'll be able to bring it under an international regime for oversight and for the do's and don't activities. Because, remember that we live in a very volatile region over here, where in South Asia, from China down to Afghanistan, the countries don't get along with each other. So political considerations come in the way of collaboration on climate. So the only way we can have that system work is not bilaterally, but multilaterally. So that would be I think this exercise should help SDPI take the agenda in that direction and plan this for the next 20 or 30 years or whatever, because this is not something you'll be able to achieve immediately. The Loss and Damage Fund took us 30 years of pitching a fight at the COPs to achieve that. So let's say even in the next 10, 15, 20 years, if we can first, from the national move to the regional, develop some kind of a HKH collaboration forums exclusively for the protection of our cryosphere to save our snow. And then under that, look at the different instruments to see how the countries in the region can come together and lobby for the global stocktake. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ms. Aisha, for bringing the community perspective to the table, and also for sharing that this is very much important. We do need a glacier monitoring strategy that is very important to measure and monitor the glaciers. With this community perspective and existing indigenous knowledge locally, now for the regional context, now I would like to invite Mr. Sher Mohammed, remote sensing specialist from ISI Mort, Nepal. Sir, my question to you is what best practices and lessons from the Hindu Kush Himalaya region are most relevant for Pakistan for glacier adaptation? And how can regional cooperation enhance glacier monitoring and risk management in Pakistan? Mr. Sher Mohammed, over to you, sir. Sir, you are muted.
Inviting me. Can you hear me? I have unmuted myself, so am I audible?
Yes, you're audible now.
Okay. Okay, so I will briefly talk about what's going on in terms of the changes that we so that respond in context. So before the adaptation and solutions, I think most of us are aware how many glaciers are there in the Indus Basin. So the Indus Basin is one of the glacier-rich basins in the HKH region and in the high mountain Asia. So around 25% of the glaciers are hosted by this basin, and compared to HKH, it is more than 45%. And within the Indus Basin, Karakoram region is more densely populated by the glaciers, where around 62% of glaciers are hosted. So here we are talking about gloves and the risk associated with the cryosphere. One aspect that is not very well studied is the glacier surges. When glacier moves at a faster speed compared to its normal speed by 10 to 100 times. And because of this, there are around 450 glaciers that are surge type. And these surges were around 28 glaciers. Those caused ice dam lakes and Gulf events. So compared to the total major Gulf events that we have recorded, which have some impact downstream, are around 150. And half of those Gulfs are caused by ice dam lakes because of glacier surges. The number of glacier lakes that changes with time, and also the PDGLs changes. We don't have exact number year by year. We need to have more data on this because the Gulfs, the PDGLs also change with the changing climate, and also with time we have more. There is an increase in glacier lakes, and also because of the infrastructure development downstream, we have to also assess the PDGs on a regular basis. So also the glaciers are also important for the downstream communities in terms of runoff and also in irrigation system, because we are heavily dependent on the melt from glaciers and snow and downstream. And historically, we have seen that glaciers are now rapidly like changing, and in future we observed based on the SSP scenarios, the forecast and projections estimates are that around 50% glaciers will be lost with 1.5 to 2 degrees. And if this temperature increase up to 4 degrees, so around 80% of the glaciers will be lost by the end of the century. So historically, in the past 20 years until 2019, the glaciers melt rate has increased by 65%. And in the Karakoram, especially where we are all aware about Karakoram anomalies, so there we have also seen that glaciers are also started melting recently. So the most recent period observations still we have to do. And here I have to highlight that those estimates that I show previously are based on remote sensing data. Here, this is one of my studies, so I compared how accurate is remote sensing is, accuracy and precision. The results that I found is glaciers are melting even more faster compared to the remote sensing estimates. So we need to have more observations on the ground so to better understand how glaciers are melting. Although we have a better understanding of regional scale, but still the uncertainty that is there because of the satellite data, and that data is not that precise, so that we also need to do more accurately. So field observations are more important. And we have also seen in the past few years that the temperature is rising and there's more warming. So because of this warming conditions, we have seen that the intensity of GLOF events are increasing. So in the past year, only in 2025, there are around 35 major GLOF events that have been reported in KP and GB. And so these information are collected based on what have been reported by NDMA, PDMA, and other news articles. So we have observed that around 835 people have been injured or died in KP, and in GB there are around 30. So also you can see the other damages to households, bridges, roads, and other infrastructure. So this clearly highlights the need for more research and more interventions to reduce the risk. One example that we are well aware of is the incident in Glacier, where there was some damage to the infrastructure downstream. And in some cases, like this, the communities are living very near to the glacier. So even in case of we have early warning system, still we are facing some challenges because the lake time that we have is very less, and in case if such event occur in night time, then it is more this might cause more damage. So it's important to have some to involve communities as well, so that they are aware. They can also do some interventions. It was like at least there was no damage to the to like people, because there was some direct communication with communities by a local herder. So,
Please, Chair Mohammed Saab,
but
can
we
you
don't
please
have.
conclude in next 2-3 minutes? Really sorry, but we want to take some more perspectives. It's an interesting presentation, but can you conclude in next 3 to 4 minutes, please? Thank you.
Okay, so there, since the time was not given, so I'm not aware like how long. And anyways, I'll just share some of the information here about the snow conditions. So this figure is from this year's observation. It is not published yet, so I estimate snow situation every year in the winter season. So you can clearly see the negative trend, and this is a historic low compared to the past 24 years. So we will have some shortage of water downstream, particularly in the basins to the west of the HKH region. So for glacier adaptation, I think there are critical issues that we have to make some steps to protect the glaciers, and through science, cooperation, and finance. So we need some science-based actions, and there is a need for building monitoring systems, early warning systems to reduce the risk, and also need to mobilize resources. There is a need for research and capacity building monitoring because we don't have very good observations in the field, and we need to have standardized observation through satellite data and remote sensing, and some high-tech technology and sensor to install on the ground. Black carbon, there have been some discussion around, but we don't have understanding how black carbon is contributing to glacier melting in this region. And multi-hazard, it is also becoming more prominent in the previous years. So we have to assess multiple hazards in an integrated way, so to have a better understanding. And then regional glaciology and hydrology forecasting models, it's important to understand different components of the runoff in a better and more precise way. Also, we need to have some research facility. There are some institutions, but there is not systematic observations in by the existing research facilities. So we need more specialized approach and more specialized university or research facility where we have scientific experts who can understand this and then link it to policy oriented messaging and other like results. So I think I've already covered my points, and then there like regional cooperation is also needed because since we are in the Indus and this is a country where the upstream basins are transboundary, so there is a need to also collaborate with other regional member countries. And also we need some financial and glacier adaptation solutions for rapid development, deployment in high-risk valleys. And also we need to have establishment that whatever I said about research facility, I will not go into detail, but these are just the bullet points since the time is limited, so I will not go explain these. I will stop here. If there is any questions, so I'm here to respond.
Thank you so much, Mohammed Sher, and sharing that the regional cooperation is very much important. With this now for the nature-based solutions for flood and glacier risk management, I would like to invite Mr. Mohammad Fawad Hayat. He is Senior Director, Recharge Pakistan WWF. Sir, my question to you is how effective are nature-based solutions in mitigating glacier-induced flood risk? And also, what scaling challenges exist for implementing nature-based solutions in Gilgit-Baltistan high-altitude regions? Over to you, sir.
जी अस्सलाम वालेकुम, थैंक यू सो मच फॉर दैट जी। अस्सलाम वालेकुम तमाम लोगों को। आई थिंक बड़ी इंटरेस्टिंग कन्वर्सेशन चल रही है आज की, और कई चीज़ें जो है ना वो मेरे लिए भी बड़ी लर्निंग के लिए आज आई हैं। और एक खुशी होती है कि आई एम पार्ट ऑफ अ प्रोग्राम जो कि नेचर बेस्ड सॉल्यूशंस के ऊपर चल रहा है, रिचार्ज पाकिस्तान अंडर WWF, और विच इज़ अ GCF फंडेड प्रोग्राम। और नेचर बेस्ड सोल्यूशन की क्या ज़रूरत है और क्या इंपॉर्टेंस है वो जेन्युइनली बहुत उभर के आई है। विद रेफरेंस टू द फैक्ट कि जो आपने अभी मुझसे सवाल किया कि जी हाउ इफेक्टिव आर द नेचर बेस्ड सॉल्यूशंस, तो अगर मैं ओवरऑल देखूं तो हिस्टोरिकली जो इंजीनियर्ड इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर है जी, दैट्स प्रूवन बट कंस्ट्रेंड सिस्टम्स, दैट्स व्हाट आई वुड एक्चुअली से, कि जो डैम्स हैं, एम्बैंकमेंट्स हैं, कैनाल्स हैं, हैज लॉन्ग एंश्योर्ड फ्लड कंट्रोल एंड वाटर सप्लाई रिलायबिलिटी। लेकिन वाइल दी स्ट्रक्चर्स प्रोवाइड शॉर्ट टर्म रिलीफ, और ये हम हिस्टोरिकली भी देखते हैं, स्पेशली जिस रीजन का हम जिक्र कर रहे हैं, अगर हम उसके अंदर देखें तो ये स्ट्रक्चर्स ऐसे हैं जो टूटते रहे हैं। ठीक है, उन्होंने अपना काम बहुत अच्छा किया है, लेकिन जब को बेनिफिट्स की हम बात करते हैं तो दैट इज वेयर द नेचर बेस्ड सॉल्यूशंस आइडियोलॉजी कम्स इन, कि जी इकोसिस्टम रिस्टोरेशन अगर पूरे किया जाए तो स्टैंड अलोन जो एक्टिविटीज हैं, जो पुराने ग्रे इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर्स हैं, उससे फिर एक आगे जाने की जरूरत है, एक स्टेप फर्दर, विच इज द नेचर बेस्ड सॉल्यूशंस। अगर हम ओवरऑल बात करें तो एग्जिस्टिंग में और नए में अगर कंपेयर करें तो इट्स लाइक the emerging limitations, increasing climate variability, ecosystem stress are exposing constraints in flexibility and long-term sustainability. So we need a complementary shift, honestly. So nature-based approaches, which is wetlands where we work, Recharge Pakistan works primarily into that, floodplains where we again work, buffers and watersheds. Enhance system resilience by working with natural processes. Then we are stronger together in terms of NBS complement grey infrastructure by reducing system stress and improving overall performance and generating the co-benefits for that matter. And obviously there's added value beyond risk reduction, which is NBS delivers multiple co-benefits. For instance, water regulation, groundwater recharge. For instance, under Recharge Pakistan, we will be restoring about 1,600 million liters of water as recharge basis, subsurface. Then biodiversity, carbon storage and livelihoods. So in a nutshell, I would say transitioning towards nature-based solutions is essential for more adaptive, resilient and sustainable water management systems. In terms of NBS, in a glacier-specific or high-altitude flood context, which is the GLOFs. So if we look at the recent GIZ study of 2024, which states that there was a 300% increase in GLOF events within just 1 year, which is 21 to 22. GB remains one of the most vulnerable regions in the country. Surging glaciers contribute to recurring GLOFs, making physical interventions alongside ecosystem-based approaches, which is critically important as well. NBS involves adopting indigenous knowledge to revive natural habitats and ecosystems. It's an integrated approach to flood management, reducing floodwater velocity, strong excess water, recharging groundwater, and protecting our communities. Adaptation starts at the grassroots level and must be locally led. It cannot succeed without indigenous knowledge. Community practices such as glacier grafting, avalanche harvesting, and ice stupas, जो कि मैडम आयशा ने भी जिक्र किया इसका, are being preserved as part of GLOF risk management in GB, complementing engineering structures like gabion walls, check dams, and irrigation channels. अगर मैं अपनी बात करूं तो I'll again say कि जो पहले भी discussion हुई, but what is WWF's contribution here? Ji? Is spanning NBS approaches to leverage healthy ecosystems to address climate, water, biodiversity, and livelihood challenges. These include restoring wetlands, revitalizing watersheds, and reforesting degraded landscapes as sustainable, cost-effective alternatives to the conventional infrastructure. Ji. We were part of the RAP project, which is Water Resource Accountability in Pakistan, and we were implementing the component 2 of that, which is the nature-based solutions, which was implemented by WWF Pakistan among other 2 partners, which aim to demonstrate NBS and EBA interventions along the Indus Basin to improve water security and governance and build climate resilience in communities in GB and KP for that matter. RAP was designed to enable government and enable relevant stakeholders to implement and replicate NBS. Recharge Pakistan itself is an upscale of RAP, a value for money analysis framework used to evaluate the project's economic efficiency, effectiveness, equity, and overall impact. And this Recharge remains the flagship program with about $73 million, is the largest national level investment in the ecosystem-based adaptation. We aim to reduce flood extent by almost 51,000 hectares and capture an estimated 20 million cubic meters of water as storage for that matter. The project promotes integrated flood risk management through reforestation of degraded landscapes, green infrastructure, and community engagement for livelihood improvement. And that's primarily in the province of KP. RP builds on, scales up on successful NBS models, which we've piloted over the past few years. And communities, of course, are at the center of these projects, actively engaged in planning, implementation, and long-term stewardship, ensuring that NBS are inclusive, locally driven, and are sustainable. Other NBS approaches in GB remains ice stupas. I won't really go into detail since Pam has already done that. Glacier grafting, indigenous Himalayan practice in which ice blocks from 2 glaciers are fused together with water and placed at selected sites as more durable long-term complement to water storage in the region. Over several months, the ice pieces fuse into a single fuse. A mass, if the site receives seasonal snowfall, the mass can gradually develop into a glacier, and that enhances our overall thing. Since you asked the second question as well, you want me to go ahead and answer that as well, or does this suffice?
Thank you so much for WhatsApp. If we are left with some time, definitely we would love to hear from you. But I think we would move on to the other speakers. Neelam, if you can invite them for the intervention, please.
Thank you. As I have already discussed and mentioned in my housekeeping rules, please speakers are requested to keep their interventions to 5 minutes. So with this now, for the global perspective, I would like to invite Dr. Davide Fogazza. He is a glaciologist, EVK2 CNR, Italy, and he is professor at University of Milan. Sir, my question to you is, which global glacier adaptation models can be realistically applied in Pakistan? And also, how can developing countries improve access to glacier-related research and technology? Over to you, sir.
Hello? Hello, can you hear me well?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, I would like to answer your questions by showing a short presentation about the activities of EVK2 CNR, if you can see that.
Yes, we can see the screen.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much for the invitation. So, to answer your questions, the first contribution that I think is direly needed is a comprehensive monitoring of the status of the cryosphere, and EVK2 CNR has led the effort of creating the new glacier inventory of Pakistan. So it's been said by other speakers before me that with this effort, we now know that there are more than 13,000 glaciers in Pakistan that cover more than 13,000 square kilometers. And I want to stress that this inventory was created by using remote sensing data that are freely available. And one other important aspect is that it was done by using images that cover only one summer season. In contrast, the inventories before this one were usually done spanning over quite a large number of years, which means then that the comparisons between the different inventories are not so easy. Whereas if you create an inventory that is focused on 1 year, then it becomes much easier to compare them across years. And besides the inventory itself, we created a book that contains all the wealth of information about these glaciers. One aspect that I just want to underline is that most of the glaciers in Pakistan, we're talking about more than 80%, are smaller than 0.5 square kilometers, whereas the number of large glaciers, the ones that are larger than 50 square kilometers, is only 32 out of 13,000. And this is important because the smaller glaciers are the ones that are more affected by climate change. And I also would like to underline that all the data that were created as part of this inventory are available freely online. So this answers your second question. So the data that was generated is available for use by scientists, but not only scientists, but also the population at large on the portal of EVK2CNR. And another aspect that I would like to stress is that this inventory was, yes, supervised by EVK2CNR and professors and researchers at the University of Milan, but it was also a big effort of capacity building because most of the inventory was actually created by students, by the Karakoram International University, University of Baltistan, and also Italian universities. We met these students regularly every 2 weeks. We led courses, and all the students received training in the analysis and use of remote sensing data. So they created the inventory firsthand under the supervision of the professors. The second effort led by EVK2CNR in terms of glacier monitoring is the creation of a network of automatic weather stations in the Hunza region, Baltoro, and now also around Chogolungma. And the reason why weather stations are important is because, yes, we have climate models that can give us a global perspective, but then we also need these weather stations to really have an idea of what is happening locally, and then also to improve the results of the climate models. And in this case, what I want to stress is that, again, these weather stations were also installed with the participation